Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Tough Friends Collective podcast with me, your host, Chelsea Gomez, also known as Oh, You're So Tough. If you're new to this podcast, just a brief overview. We talk about cancer in real, authentic, and candid ways, with many of the stories that we discuss here coming direct from my Instagram page, which is called Oh, You're So Tough. I am so sorry. It has taken me forever to do another podcast. I know I said that last time, but it just seems like the holidays have just taken over my life and everything has gotten away from me. And I know a lot of you are, relating to that this year. I was thinking about doing a podcast where we talk about the holidays, but I think that I, pretty well covered that on my Instagram this month. I just think that, the holidays are really hard, especially when you're going through something like cancer. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and sad and all of the things, please know that you're not alone and it is completely normal. Um, but in any case, I thought that we should go over some of the newest submissions that I've gotten recently and just kind of talk through some of them. Sometimes I kind of wish I could talk back to these submitters directly and kind of say, what I feel or think. And I hope that it's helpful. And so I think that's something we'll do here. And yeah, so this is directly from the WTF Wednesday and Salty Sunday art series that I have on my account, where people submit their anonymous stories about things that have happened to them during cancer. And I have like my artistic interpretation of it. Being only one person, it is really hard for me to cover absolutely every submission because I can only do about 10 a week. So I thought that, kind of discussing some here on this podcast, like we've done in the past, might be another good way to kind of talk through these submissions. And yeah, I don't know, like I read every single submission, I keep them all until they're drawn. But there are some times when I just don't have the right way, or I feel the right way to artistically represent what the situation or experience is. And so, yeah, so talking through some things here might be a good second. So if you are listening and you're one of these submitters, thank you for your authenticity and your vulnerability and your trust with me and this community. So the first submission I am going to read is, I was diagnosed December 2023, finished chemo May 2024. I feel like I am stuck in a trauma state while everyone else is living life, having milestones, but I don't know how to exist. This submission is extremely relatable to me. I'm sure a lot of you listening are like, because, when you are diagnosed with cancer, I felt, at least, and I've heard from others, that it feels like you're kind of entering into a different world. Like, that's why I relate to ghosts. I make a lot of ghosts in my art. You can see one back there, if you're watching the video version. But I make a lot of ghosts, and the ghosts aren't a bad thing in my artwork or a sad thing or a scary thing. The ghosts are just kind of representative of how I saw myself when I got diagnosed. Like, I was floating between two worlds, but I wasn't gone. Like, if they talk about ghosts, they're kind of like hanging around, can't move on. And that's sort of the feeling I got the whole time I was in cancer treatment and when I'm out of cancer treatment. I still feel like that some days. I have felt better in the recent years as I've gone to therapy and kind of explored some of those feelings. But that feeling of being in a completely different world or existence is still with me. And I think with a lot of people who go through something like cancer, especially if you can finish treatment. Not everyone does, but if you are a person who is able to finish treatment, so there's like a definitive end to your cancer treatment and then you're going into survivorship, a lot of times people feel that survivorship is harder for many different reasons. It can be because, you don't feel safe anymore. Who wants to go to the oncologist? Not me. But when you go to the oncologist or the cancer center all the time, you're constantly being monitored. You're constantly being told, like, everything looks good. Or whatever. You have somebody monitoring your cancer. And when you are kind of shown the door and said, like, see you in 3 months or see you in 6 months or see you in a year, it's scary because it's like you are responsible for monitoring it. And so many of us went a long time without being diagnosed because of whatever. Maybe a doctor dismissed you, or maybe you even didn't take it seriously. And so when that's put all on you, it can feel really scary. And you're whole focus a lot of times becomes cancer. And so like, how do you transition from 24/7 cancer land to back to a life that you maybe don't fit in anymore or feel like you don't? I am the same way. I, went back to work 6 weeks after I finished chemo the first time. And I thought, oh, we're just going to pretend like I never had cancer. That did not work. um, the thing is the trauma and the experience, no matter if you stick your head in the sand for a couple months or not, it's going to come back and it's going to rear its ugly head. And it's better to get help and resources and support while you're going through treatment, and then extend that into survivorship if you are able to enter that phase of your cancer experience. Like I said, I just always like to emphasize for my friends that are dealing with chronic cancer and metastatic cancer that so much of, these discussions about survivorship can kind of be a little difficult because, they don't get that. And so I just want to hold space for you if that is you. And then also, hold space for this other experience. Yeah. So there's a bunch of facets to this feeling that like, you don't relate to the real world. I don't know if it's the real world, but you don't relate to the non-cancer world anymore. And you will see too, a lot of times you lose touch with friends who were your friends before cancer because they don't necessarily understand what you're going through, and you just kind of are sick of explaining it. So a lot of times, I mean, yes, we get ghosted by people. We've talked about that. But I'm talking about just people you fall out of step with in your life because of this experience. And a lot of times people think, myself included, so the patient or the people outside of you think, oh, you're done now, you can just move on down the road. Like I thought that at one time. The reality is, no, you're not just skipping on down the road. It's a life-changing, life-altering experience. So yeah, I think I talked about this submission a whole different ways from many different levels, but all to say that I relate with this statement. It is normal, and it is something that I feel like can get better if you seek help, or, if you aren't someone who has access to therapy, talking to people that are trusted in your life. And there are resources out there like Gilda's Club or Cancer Support Community. If you look for one of those in your area, sometimes they do have free counseling. So that is something that if you are not able to access therapy yourself, that is something that you can look into. Before we get to the next submission, I just want to ask very nicely, if you do enjoy this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would leave me a review wherever you're listening. That could be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever. It really does help. I am just one person making this podcast, doing it all by myself. So yeah, any support you're able to give me, I truly do appreciate. Okay, so here's the next one. My mom has made my cancer her entire personality. I'm married and don't live at home, so she's absolutely not my primary caretaker. Since my diagnosis, she has been talking about my cancer to literally everyone, never once thinking about how I might feel about that and how that violates my privacy, as it should be up to me how and with who I share that. Today, she sent me a text meant for my aunt. Going to a support group for relatives of cancer patients. Oh well, never would have thought last year that this is what I would be doing the eve of my birthday. Yes, how very inconvenient for you. The perspective I'm going to give on this particular submission is obviously one from a patient perspective. I am not on the caregiver side, so I will balance this sort of commentary with, acknowledging that I don't have the caregiver experience. And like the submitter said, it's not her primary caregiver. So it is kind of, a gray area with how this mother is reacting. I will say that I think it's very inappropriate for anyone, no matter if it's your mother, your husband, your wife, your best friend, your grandma, your aunt, whomever. It is very inappropriate for people who you trusted with your medical information or your medical status or whatever it might be to blab that to the entire world without your permission. Like, that submitter is 100% valid in that feeling. Like, I tell this to patients all the time. Like, I felt like I owed everyone the 5 o'clock news of my cancer. Like, I had a Facebook group that someone set up. I was posting updates. I was, on my way to chemo, felt like I had to snap a selfie and talk about how I was doing. And it all had to always be positive, because that's what the world's looking for. Well, newsflash, you're not required to tell anyone anything. And I mean anyone. This is your story, your experience, your health, your everything. And you can be selfish. And it's not even selfish to not divulge this. It's self-care, it's boundaries. And this mother is completely stepping over these boundaries. So to this submitter, I would say that make sure that you have communicated your boundaries to your mom and tell her that you're not okay with it, because once you've done that and then they step over your boundaries, like you've communicated it clearly, then there's a bigger conversation and a bigger issue where you can be like, you know what, Mom, I'm not going to be keeping you informed about my health or my life anymore if I can't trust you to keep that to yourself. And as far as the mom making this person's cancer her whole personality, I've seen it before, and it is a really strange way that I think that some people cope with this. Now, her mother reaching out to go to a support group for, parents of children going through cancer, even if they are grown, I think that's good. I think it's better for whoever, like a parent or if it is a caregiver, to find safe spaces to share these sorts of feelings and thoughts that aren't on the patient, because we've talked about it before. There's like a circle. I can't think of the analogy, but there's like this circle thing where it's like you complain out of your circle. And so if the mother has feelings or complaints, those need to be going out away from the patient, and she needs to manage that. Like, we're not responsible for other people's feelings about their diagnosis. We're not responsible for that. They need to figure it out. And even though it's hard, like, you blame yourself that, like, whoever is sad or, feeling some way about your illness, you didn't choose this. You didn't choose it. And so everyone has to deal with it and learn how to cope. And I, for a long time, was like, man, it's my fault that, so-and-so person in my life is sad because I got sick. Well, damn, I'm sad too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my fault. It sucks, but it's not our fault. So the mom going to the support group, I think, is a good thing. Now, it's not like her text to the aunt, like, I never thought I would see myself here. Well, none of us thought we'd see ourselves here. None of us had cancer written in our lives' plans, and, we're on our way to it. It's all a surprise, a shock, whatever. No matter even if you have a genetic link in cancer, it's still life-altering, life-changing that you get this news for pretty much everyone in your life. And so I think, for this submitter, I would definitely say your feelings are valid. Set boundaries with your mom. Once you have clearly and firmly set the boundary, if she continues to cross it, then we'll take it from there. There's a bigger conversation, like I said. But yeah, I can see how that is just really frustrating, especially when you have cancer. You feel like everyone's already looking at you and talking about you, and yeah. And so it's like, just for your parent to make your cancer their whole personality, and it doesn't sound like the mom is that involved with this person's life as far as helping them. So I don't know that to be 100% the case, but they didn't mention that. It's one thing if your parent is super involved and they're being so supportive. I have a friend whose mom, when they got sick, moved in with them at college to get them through their last semester of college, and did everything for them, cooked, cleaned, everything. That's one thing. But if you're just using this as quasi grief tourism, I want attention because my child has cancer, my adult child, that I'm not liking. The third submission is, after returning to work from medical leave while still being in active treatment, my boss asked me where I saw myself in 3 years. And all I wanted to say was, hopefully not dead. This submission really reminded me of the reel I made a couple weeks ago. It was an Elmo sound. It was what's your 5-year plan? And it's 5-year plan? What's that? What are you going to do in 5 years? I don't know. I don't even think about 5 minutes from now. And it's so relatable because that's the reality. For a lot of us, I can't speak for everyone. For me, especially, like, number one, planning for the future after you've gone through something like cancer is flippin' scary because you never know, like, what is gonna be happening because so much of your life is thrown into like chaos when you get diagnosed that it's like if you plan something even for 2 months from now, am I tempting the fates of Cancerland? Like, am I toying with the universe? Is it going to strike me down again? And so, these questions like 5-year plans when you've gone through something like cancer just sound ridiculous because you've lived like moment to moment so much and so much has been uncertain and like so much is like determined based on like your blood work of the week or your scan results or whatever it might be that like thinking that you could even plan years in advance sounds ridiculous sometimes. And for me, like I am almost 5 years out from my transplant. I'll be 5 years out April 1st of next year. And even though I'm 5 years out, I still have these same thoughts like, what's my plans? IDK, surviving to the next day, like knocking on wood, like making sure that I don't try to do too much that would anger the universe. Like I have become extremely superstitious post cancer, and I know a lot of other people have too. But whether you're superstitious or not, a fear of planning for the future after facing life or death scenario is 100% valid. I think what happens a lot of times with cancer patients and the rest of the world is that the rest of the world has this built-in like expectation for you. And I don't know where exactly it comes from, whether it's from like the media or like it probably is from the media or like media or stories that are published about, cancer patient climbs Mount Everest 1 month after finishing brutal chemo. And it's like, not realistic. Like, if that was my headline, it'd be like, cancer patient 1 month from chemo, still sitting on the couch. Like, that is the real life version. But, like, is that exciting to watch on TV? I don't know. I can't answer that. I think that more media should portray cancer in an appropriate and realistic way, which is like, ain't nobody got time or patience or even mental bandwidth to be planning all of these magical tasks that you want to do once you survive. Like, we're just trying to survive. And it's a lot of pressure. Like, you'll have people come up to you like, oh, what are you going to do with your life now? Are you going to, like, move to wherever and, like, volunteer the rest of your days? Or are you going to, like, write the next great novel? Are you going to, like, whatever. I don't care what it is. It's like people have these expectations and you're just like, damn, like, I just lived through all of this BS and I don't want to do anything. Like, I felt like that for such a long time. Like, I don't want to do anything. My work, I ended up going back to work, then I relapsed, like I talked about earlier. But then my work, when I relapsed, tried to fire me and, you know, like just for being sick. And I was so devastated, so upset, blah, blah, blah. And then when ultimately it came down to the time for when I had to go back to work, I had fought to have this job. I was like, you know what? I don't want to. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to spend my days there. I hate that place. I just hate it. And so, very privileged take. I understand. My husband had a, pretty decent job. And so we were like, we'll figure it out. Quit your job. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, you have gone through so much crap that you didn't go through all of that stuff just to sit at a stupid cubicle and, like, I don't know. I know that's a very privileged take and that so many people couldn't do that. But, like, I'm so grateful that I was able to take that step away because it helped me do nothing to then figure out what I wanted my life to look like. Like, I started being creative, I started drawing, and it led me to a whole new life. Like what I'm living now, I could have never imagined that for myself. And it really was born from, being just so, beaten down as a person, lost, but that desire to just like be in that moment and not have all the answers, which is really hard for me because I always want to have all the answers. That's like the type of person I've been, like a very type A person working all these goals, all these things. And like now I have little goals here and there, but like at the end of the day, if you were to ask me my 3-year goal, it's like, I hope I'm still around. I hope I'm still like, I just want to be happy. And if ultimately your goal in life after you finish cancer is to be happy, great. That is an amazing goal. And that is something we should all strive to achieve. And I bet you people who have 3, 5, 10-year goals, some of them don't have being happy on their list. And they should. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up on that last submission. I hope that you enjoyed this format of this episode. I think we've done a couple, maybe 1 or 2 like this before, but they always seem to have a central theme. I don't know if this one had a central theme, but we'll see when I listen back and edit it. But I enjoyed just talking through some of these submissions on so many different topics because there are so many complex emotions when it comes to cancer. And, you know, even though there's overarching themes that run through a lot of these stories, you know, these individual topics are good to talk about because I guarantee somebody listening to this feels less alone because you shared your story. So thank you to those submitters. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode's format. I will be back, I hope, much sooner with another podcast. I know my daughter's out of school next week, so that'll be interesting, but we will figure it out. I appreciate you for listening and being here, and I hope that you have a lovely holiday season with your family. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.